Jack it up. Jack it up.
Hover over, click that one, and then go down and hit the slideshow. Here, hit escape. That's right, and then hover over it. Yes. This one.
Jack it up.
I know.
it up.
Interesting, I never had technology problems.
We never have technology problems.
So Commissioner Kramer is texting me. I'm curious.
Jack it up. Jack it up.
Mayor too. Bethany, have you heard either way from the mayor?
Jack it up.
Welcome, Commissioner Kramer. Can you hear us?
I can. How are y'all doing?
Great. And I think Commissioner Elder is also on. Can you hear us?
I can hear you, Don. Can you hear me?
Yep, very well. Thanks, Ed. The mayor's not here yet. Don, how did you want to proceed? Do you want to call the meeting to order, or do you want us to do that from the room here?
I'm going to let you do that from the room.
Very well. All right. And after one, call the meeting to order. We have a quorum, so we'll proceed, and we'll let the mayor catch up with us, or we'll get with him later as time permits. Chief, I don't know how you'd like to proceed. We've been through the proposed budget, but it looks like you may have a presentation or would like to go through some materials first.
Yes, I'll pass this on to our Executive Services Bureau. They have a presentation for us to give us an outline and a smaller look than the 300 pages of the budget.
Good afternoon. In the spirit of time, we'll make this as quickly as possible, but as thorough. Major Josh Heinen is going to go through some slides that you'll have in front of you, and then we'll open it up for any questions that you may have.
Josh, thanks.
Can everybody hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay. As the Colonel said, I'm Josh Heinen, the Major over the Fiscal Division, and I'm here today to present our fiscal year 25-26 Kansas City Police Department budget request. One of the first things I like to do in this presentation is give a brief explanation of some of the big numbers that you see in our, as the Colonel referenced, our 300-page book here. So all of these numbers mean something. They all work I can't even say it. They all work together. The first one you see there, the $347 million, that is inclusive of all of the funds. That includes our treasury account and as well as all of our grant funds. And so in that fund, just by the way some appropriations and revenues and expenditures are set up, some of the things have to be double counted the way we set up grants. And so that's why that number is so much larger than what our operating budget is. The next one you see, $322 million, is our city funds. That is our general funds, as well as our grant funds, public safety sales tax, and health levy funds. And then finally is the general fund. Our general fund request this year is $298,942,734. That general fund request represents the operating budget of the police department outside of grants and public safety sales tax and health levy funds. Going forward in this presentation, we will specifically refer to the general fund, the operating budget of the police department. As you can see here, this is a breakdown of what that budget looks like. Most of our costs or most of our expenses of the police department go toward personnel. That is the biggest priority of this police department. It was during our last budget year, as it is every year, and it is during this year as well. And so you can see a little bit of a difference there. Of the general fund requested number, 91% of that goes to the personnel costs, but some of our personnel costs are also calculated in contractual services. And so when you include that in the total personnel costs, it equals 92% of our budget. And then everything else goes to buy the uniforms, keep the lights on, pay the bills, that sort of thing. So this is a breakdown of what our budget request increase is for our request this year compared to what was appropriated last year. As you know, as being a part of the process last year, there was a difference between our request and what was appropriated. That difference was approximately $12 million by the time it was appropriated. And so this request includes that difference from last year. So if you compared requested to requested, it would not seem like such a big ask, but this is requested to what was appropriated after those efficiency cuts were made. So you can see here on this breakdown, if you go back to that slide, Ben. On this breakdown here, the biggest increase we have, because it is the biggest cost we have for the police department, of course, is personnel. It goes into personnel salaries. And part of that cost is also pensions. That's based on an actuarial study every year. It fluctuates based on the market, based upon the number of personnel we have, the people paying in, the people drawing out. And so we don't necessarily have a lot of control over that ask. That is an agreement with the city and based on that actuarial. Settlements and legal fees, of course, are increasing. And so this is a part of our increase this year is that ask for those specific funds. Health insurance every year seems to go up. We always budget for an 8% increase and hoping we can keep it around that 8% increase again this year. Workers' compensation, we have saw that trending up in the past few years, and so we are trying to account for that in this as well. And then other adjustments, a lot of that goes toward contractual services and just costs of inflation from this last year to this year.
Pause for just a second. I want to make sure I understood. That's requested compared to requested last year, or requested compared
that
to
is,
appropriated?
This year's requested compared to what was appropriated.
Got it. Thank you.
Yep.
So just to clarify, if you can go back a slide. So the 10.2 million is an increase, is kind of the net positive request over what was appropriated in 2024?
That is correct. Yep. That is an increase in salary request compared to what was appropriated. And you'll see at this next slide here, we break that down because I figure that would be a question that comes up, and so we'll break down what that actually looks like. So because that is our biggest increase in salaries, that request this year is at 10.2 million. We broke it down in this slide to show you how that actually works. And so last year, we adopted a new increased pay scale for our sworn members. That was a big priority that we had last year. And so in doing that, we make the adjustment at the beginning of the fiscal year, but then at anniversary increases, the officers got a step on their anniversary date. And so when you account for that step and the initial adjustment for a full year, that's what you see here as the full year cost of the previous pay adjustments. And that's the biggest increase in our salaries. It's just inclusive of paying a full year's salary of last year's step increases. Oh, you can go back. We'll stay on this slide for a little bit here. So we're also adding 15 new positions this year, or we're requesting 15 new TOs positions that are going to be funded for in the budget. That is for our wellness unit. We want to make that a priority this year. They do a great job of going out and connecting with all of our department members, and they could really use one more person to do that. Our digital technology section, you've seen in the chief's transmittal letter, she is looking all over the department to find opportunities where we can move sworn members back out to the services that they provide to the community and backfill with some professional staff. And that's what this request is for. And then detention services. As you know, the city approved an ordinance for a central booking facility at KCPD, and it will cause an increase in staffing. And so we're trying to get ahead of that and plan ahead for what that increase will look like.
So if you pause right there, so if
You bet.
on the digital technology section, that's moving, or 4 new positions, civilian positions for that role. Is it one for one law enforcement that moves out of that, or?
Yes. Yep.
And then the detention, that's all for what is to happen when the improvements are made in this building.
Correct. We project that it'll take a TO of 40 detention facility officers, which is an increase of 9 for what we currently have.
Question? On the face of this, when you read it, I don't see an increase in officers. Or am I overlooking that?
So that, the full year cost of previous pay adjustments is also inclusive of what that increase would be. So every year, we ask for funding to increase our number of officers. This funding, the entire thing, from when it goes to sworn members, is for 1,232 non-grant funded officers. And so those, even the unfilled positions are included in here with the anticipation that we will fill them in next fiscal year and therefore are able to budget for them.
I ask that because I see that being a question moving forward.
Could I add in just a little bit of that, which, right now, the current budget year that we're in, we asked for the number of officers to be funded, not the full 1,408 numbers of officers being funded. The academy classes that we've gotten in so far have not been to the point where we would ask above that number. Really, we're still trying to get above attrition and still trying to make some gains. I'm hoping, best case scenario, we would be able to gain like 50 officers in a class, and once we get there, then we would ask for more funding. If that was part of the question that you asked.
That was.
Okay, thank you.
And I read that in this brief, but I just wanted, a little clarification on it. So thank you, perfect.
Thank you for that. Going down this list, last year we made sworn members and their pay scale a priority. I like to say this year is the year for professional staff. And so we did a request for proposal this fiscal year, identified a company to come in and do a third-party market-based compensation study for all of our sworn members, their job descriptions, the pay scale, and how everything compares with the market. They were able to give us some good results on that, something that we think is reasonable, and we want to implement those adjustments beginning May 1st on this next fiscal year. The cost of that implementation is $2.5 million over what we budgeted last year, but then that's also throughout the year going to include a step increase for professional staff that qualify for it, and then a 2% incentive for those that are already at top step. And then also you see on here the law enforcement pay step adjustments that we ask for every year. For those that are not at top step, we request a step increase for them on their anniversary date, and that same 2% incentive for those members that are already at top step. So this gives a good overview of what is in that $10 million increase for salaries and how that breaks down. All right, Ben, we can go to the next one. And these other slides I will gloss over pretty quickly, and a lot of it is just for your ease of seeing very quickly what makes up those funds. Our contractual services this year, last year we requested about $16.5 million in contractual services. That there was efficiency cuts that were done on the city side before we adopted the budget. Those efficiency cuts totaled about $1.7 million. We're still trending to meet that $16.5 million that we budgeted last year, so we're going to have to make up a little bit of a difference there. And so our request this year for the $18 million is inclusive of an increase in legal fees over last year. That's really about all that is. So from a contractual services standpoint, our operating budget isn't increasing really any more than what we anticipated it would be last year as well, and what it's trending toward. Our commodities here is really the same thing, a minimal increase on what it was the previous year. Just as inflation increases, a lot of our commodities go toward operational costs and toward equipment and uniform costs. And finally, we get to our capital outlay. The big difference in our capital outlay this year is the request for body-worn camera, in-car camera system. our current body-worn camera, in-car camera system. We have a software agreement in place with the company that we're using currently, and that agreement is going to end in 2025, about mid-year. And so we are going to have to do something with that, and whether that's looking at potential new equipment, updating equipment, or renewing that agreement. We're still in conversations and seeing what's available out there on the market right now, but we will know that we will need some extra funding to do that with next year. And that's all I have for this presentation. If you have any questions for me, please let me know.
Any questions? I have a few that I wanted, I don't know if questions, but maybe some observations, but I'll give you the floor. I know this is you and Commissioner Elder's first time, so you might have some questions about how the process works.
Actually, pre-meeting, we talked about timing, and that was explained that the deadline for the city is the 18th of October. What was interesting in the brief, just to comment, maybe this last question, is our challenge with our vehicles, right? And quite a few of them need replacing, and that we have X number over 10 years old, and was that represented in?
Because it's such a big ask, typically we don't ask for it in a budget year. The reality of it is, we look for funding outside of our operating budget funds to be able to work with that. And some of it is inclusive of working with the city, trying to build that relationship and ask them to see if they have funding outside of the general fund to be able to help us with that cost. We're looking for grants or outside entities. We still have roughly 150 Crown Vics that we badly need to replace. The money we get from the city every year has been the past few years $2 million, which buys us anywhere from 35 to 40 vehicles. It's about a 5% upgrade in our entire fleet, which isn't enough to it's not enough to keep up with our aging fleet, unfortunately. So this year we did ask for $3 million in that account just to increase it a little bit, but then we, excuse me, always look for other funding sources as well. So that way we still want to be good partners with the city when we want to make sure that the funding still exists over on their side to pay for all of the other city services that get budgeted from it.
Yeah, not to go too far down this rabbit hole, but I think that is an example of what appears how the entire budget has been approached this year, meaning that if we went all in on vehicles, that's about a $16 million number. But to balance against all the other needs that we have and trying to be a good partner and collaborate with the city, knowing that we need to be in that reasonable frame, you're asking for the $3 million and replace as many vehicles as we can for that. And I think that comes through in some other places also. So I like the way you characterized it. The focus this year is on professional compensation, professional staff, whereas last year we had a really strong focus on officers, primarily because the statutory cap was removed and allowed us to get to market. But that kind of worked its way through the entire department, so now we can focus on the professionals. But that's a much less of an increase this year relative to what it was last year for the officers.
It is correct. It's roughly 50% less of an increase this year.
All right, thank you. Great strategy, and I get it. So,
Well, thank you.
thank you very much.
Yeah, and I'll give credit. Christine and her staff do a great job. If you look through this entire budget, line by line, you'll see based upon what we requested last year, what the projection is that's going to come in. Some stuff increased, some stuff decreased. It's not like they go through and say, oh, everything's the city plans for a 4% increase across the board, so everything's going to increase by 4%. No, everything is line by line looked through. This is trending lower, so we're going to decrease our ask this year in this category. This is trending higher, so we're going to increase it in this category, just based upon what we truly need to operate the police department next fiscal year.
Just so you know, Christine, how much we appreciate that. I read every page of all 300 pages in the book. And I actually compared it back to last year, just so we could see where it's going up and going down. But big picture, it was a 15.5% year-over-year increase last year compared to about 8.9% this year. So it gives you that scale of what that big raise was last year. So to me, that That means a lot in illustrating, trying to be reasonable and doing just what we need. And maybe that ties into what you had in the cover letter, and I know we talked about it earlier in the year with the city approaching us on the priority-based budgeting methodology, which to me makes a lot of sense, you know, kind of a bottom-up approach and see what it's going to take to fulfill all the programs. Can you maybe talk a little bit about that, and did it change any way that we looked at how we allocate funds for those different line items?
You bet. Yeah, the city has implemented priority-based budgeting this year. They've done it specifically for the general fund, and then next year they're going to look at rolling in some of their other funds into that priority-based budgeting scope. So we've had multiple meetings with them, and, you know, I told them we are absolutely going to be good partners about this. We are going to participate every step of the way. We've tried to do our own research on our side about priority-based budgeting, what it looks like, how it affects our budget. And honestly, it really doesn't change that much. The biggest thing it changed from our side is what we look as a program in our budget. So previously, our programs had been at the bureau level, and that's how we divided them out in the budget, is based upon that organizational chart. This year, the city wanted the programs at the division level. And so you'll see in, I think it's Schedule 7, Schedule 8, I think it is, where it breaks out the programs at the division level. And that's where you see the pie charts just expand, where it's almost unreadable because of all the divisions within the police department. But it is a good way to look at what is the real cost to run this division, what is the real cost to run this division, and that's what they're trying to get toward. Unfortunately, we have an antiquated budgeting system that doesn't always allow that to occur. The software that, or the lack of software that Christine uses, it's a lot of Excel spreadsheets, and so we still roll up, like, let's say, work comp. It's rolled up into a single category within the management bureau or the management division versus every individual member's work comp cost rolled into the cost of that division where they specifically work. That's just not something that we're able to do with our lack of software for a budgeting system, but we are looking at the software that the city currently uses for budgeting and maybe implementing something like that going forward.
I appreciate that review and how you start with the personnel necessary for each one of the, what we call programs now. And then I'm sure that you have to add on materials, equipment, commodities, things like that to really fulfill whatever that program is.
Yeah, and some of it, it's difficult to really evaluate that true cost because like a minor equipment purchase, so let's say all the uniforms for the department, we roll that into the fiscal division into that program as a minor equipment cost versus we have 30 officers at this patrol station on this watch and all the equipment, all the uniforms, everything they need, that cost is rolled into that division. That really gets down into the minutia of it, and our software just doesn't work that way to allow it to do it.
You know, is there some better software out there we need to try to budget in future years? Sounds like we're heading in that direction.
We are heading in that direction. The short answer is yes. We have been, gosh, it's been a year now, a year-long process in partnership with the city. They are looking at a new ERP system, and we have been a part of that every step of the way. They put out an RFP. We narrowed it down to 4 respondents. We're going to start having meetings here at the end of this month and early November to do an in-person evaluation, have a presentation from all of those respondents. It's going to be all the city departments, department directors, to include the police department. Christine and I will be there for those and start looking at ways we can move our organization from a software standpoint, from a budgeting fiscal standpoint, where it needs to be.
Ed or Dawn, I want to make sure if you have questions that you have an opportunity to voice those.
I don't have any questions.
Yeah, I'm good. Thank you, though.
If I could just Skip some final
May,
words
yeah.
here. I know that you probably have looked through my final thoughts, but as chief of police, I do have that responsibility to provide a budget that reflects the needs of the operating costs for the entire Kansas City, Missouri Police Department budget. I also realize the substantial amount of our requests that we ask the city each year. And I also am aware of the city's limited resources. With that, I invite a collaborative approach, similar to last year, and I request to work closely with the city manager and city finance to produce an amicable budget in a transparent process. And with that being said, I do recommend the board approve this budget document for submission to the city council to meet the needs of the department in the ensuing fiscal year as required by RSMO Chapter 84. Thank you for your review and consideration.
Thank you, Chief. Is there a motion to accept the recommendation to approve this budget and forward to the city council, or to the city of Kansas City?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second it.
Thank you. It's been moved and second. Is there any discussion on that motion? Seeing no discussion, those in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Motion passes. Any other business to take up? If not, I would move that we go into closed session of this meeting pursuant to Section 610.021 and subsections 1, 3, 9, and 13 of the revised statutes of Missouri. Is there a second on that motion?
Second?
Any discussion on that motion to go into closed? If not, we need a roll call for this vote. Whitaker, aye.
Romeus, aye.
Elder, aye.
Kramer, aye.
Thank you. We'll go into closed.
Kramer, aye.
Thank you all very much. I know that's a lot of work, and we really do appreciate all the attention and getting us the information well in advance to be able to review this. So thank you very much.
Thank you.